I'd like to call the meeting to order. Gary, could you lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome everyone to the regular May Committee of the Whole meeting for District 94 Board of Education. Mission statement, please.
Community High School strives to promote and provide growth experiences in learning, leadership, and living.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Nagel?
Present.
Mr. Brown?
Here.
Ms. DeRamus? Ms. Munoz?
Here.
Mr. Sake?
Present.
Mr. Zuniga? Here. And Ms. Casey Meir?
Here.
Okay, that brings us to public participation, and I do not see any public who wishes to participate. So moving on, that brings us to reports and information. Wildcat Booster Advertising Proposal.
Yes, thank you. So following up on the conversations that we had in a previous board meeting, as well as going back, I think, a few board meetings from our representatives from the Booster Club, I want to first give a big thanks to Mr. Nagel for reaching out and providing some information. It sounds like he was able to gather some input from the board in general. I was able to then use that input, have a dialogue with our Booster Club and our athletic director, and really try to bring some specificity and details to this dialogue that we've begun to see if we can have some consensus about the Booster Club and their proposal to do advertising and generate revenue for our athletic programming. So I want to first talk about, this was a topic we talked about a bit, the number of signs and the duration of signs. So a lot of dialogue and looking at some spaces, and I've got some photos that we'll go through in just a minute, and talking to the boosters. They are proposing, and I agree with, a no more than 12 total signs. That would be the initial to start out. And let me talk a little bit about where those would be. 4, and if you remember the size of the signs that Mr. Wimbish brought to the last meeting. In Bishop Gym, and I'll show you the spot we were thinking, no more than 4 signs in Bishop Gym as advertisements. And then no more than 8 of the larger banners on the outdoor stadium. And the Booster Club would prefer to go through a 2-year agreement with possible advertisers. So the length of the agreement would be 2 school years. So in this case, it would be the 22-23 school year and the 23-24 school year. And we can talk about that a length of time if we need to, but that is what they preferred because the schools they reached out to that have similar programs, it seems to be the norm, is going with a 2-year window of time. So here are, and I apologize for my poor photography skills, but this is Wood Street, the top left picture here. This is Wood Street. And we would propose no more than 4 signs that run the length of the visitor bleachers. And one added benefit is that properly placed signs could cover the porta potty view. I'm just saying, that might help a little bit. But that really lines up with one of the values, Mr. Nagel, that you pointed out of we don't want to obstruct the view of the stadium from the street. It's beautiful. We've invested in it. It looks wonderful. Let's not block it. This would simply block the view of the underside of the away bleachers. The other spot on the exterior would be here. These are, again, the visitor bleachers, but the flip side. And this would be very visible from the home bleachers. So if you're watching a game and you're in the home bleachers, you would be able to see these right here. And again, no more than 4 signs. And they would ideally all take up 1 fence panel. And we'd space them evenly, center them off the bleachers, and really try to make sure that the aesthetics of it are appealing. Now within Bishop Gym, we would propose again, now think about those, I believe they're 3 foot by, were they 2 feet, 2.5, not very big. No more than 4 of them right here. This is the west end of the gym, the side of it closest to us right now. So if you're in the home bleachers, you look to your right, this is where that would be. It's a dead space right now because of the new scoreboard and the way things are configured. It's open, it's right there. It doesn't obstruct the view. It doesn't detract from any of the student state cutouts or other recognition items that we have. It's far away from the posters and other displays that we have for our conference companions that we compete against as well. We thought it would be visible So it would be appealing to vendors, but not obstructive and not distracting to the gym. And remember, because we designed the colors of it, and that it's Under Armour as well, which our uniforms are, it does have a lot of aesthetic match to what we already have in there. So in regards to thinking about an approval process to make sure that we don't have vendors or other things that don't line up with some of the priorities that the board has conveyed. The process for approving would be the Booster Club would have a form that I'm going to share a template of that with you tonight. They have a form that they would use to solicit businesses with, and there are a number of alumni-owned businesses that are local that they would reach out to initially. The businesses use that form to indicate what they'd like to advertise. The Booster Club would communicate that to the athletic director. The athletic director would give that to my attention, and he and I together would then go through and approve sponsors or not. Again, based on those priorities and values that the board has conveyed. Obviously, no tobacco or e-cigarette or vaping materials, no alcohol, CBD marijuana, or anything related to that, no gambling, and obviously things that line up with the values of the community. Definite preference to local businesses over anything national, and preference to advertising the company over the product. And this is just a quick cutout, but I can certainly give anybody a draft copy of this form, and it's smaller in the display than I thought it would be. But this is what the Booster Club would use to solicit to select businesses in the community of whether or not they want to advertise. And again, you'd see the pricing and then work on the location. But these are the two sizes that were shown to the board. And then obviously there'd be some options if someone wanted to buy more than one sign. They could work through that. So this would be an initial kind of small endeavor. Again, no more than 12. I'll be honest, if we got 12, I think I'd be kind of surprised. I think it'll be a little smaller and maybe a bit more meager in the beginning, but it's definitely something that could grow and could generate a not insignificant revenue stream that allows us to do some things above and beyond for the various athletic programs. So, and I'll definitely entertain any questions, knowing some of that I may have to bring back to the board or to the boosters and get some input. But at the same time, if we're able to kind of get to a place where I think both the board as well as the boosters, and I've talked with both, feel good, I think, and we have consensus on that, we can move forward with allowing the boosters to go down this avenue.
For the outdoor ones, are permits required for any of those?
To put the signs up?
Well, to display signage that's visible to the public.
No, I don't believe so. And that's something I can check on local ordinance, Gary. That's a great question. I don't believe so. I think we're okay and in the clear because it's our local property. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Rich, for everything that you put into it, and thank you, Will. That was nice and concise, and I think just what we needed to know.
Right.
Not sure what the board opinions are at this point. I've been giving this a lot of thought since we had the discussion at the last meeting, and I appreciate the effort put into it, but as I've been reflecting on it, and actually the comment that Rich made at the last meeting about kind of thinking about school as a safe place away from all the advertising that we're always being bombarded with it, that really has been resonating with me more and more as I've been thinking on it. And as much as it is a revenue stream, is that something we really want to get into, or would we rather have it be, not bombarding our kids and our people coming to the games with the advertising? It's advertising on your phones, on the TV, radio, everything. So a few thoughts I've had, but what are you folks thinking?
I think it highlights what we offer in this community. That's one way to look at it, too, kind of a flip side way. And we're not overdoing it, it seems like, because I agree with you. We don't want to inundate people with advertising, and I think those two areas outdoors that you selected, especially the one on the outside fence, and if it highlights our local businesses, people can kind of see what's in the area if they're, coming in for what would be an away game for them. In that respect, I like the idea.
I don't have issues with the outdoor ones, particularly indoor ones I do have more of an issue with. Rather see it at least start up with the outdoor ones and then see how it goes. I just, the interior of the building has been considered kind of a sacrosanct area that we try to avoid it to the extent possible. Yeah, there's Coke machines, things like that around, but that's kind of unavoidable if you're going to offer the product. But this is optional.
So you're comfortable with it if they eliminated the indoor advertisements for the time being?
At least for the first year to see how things go, and then possibly revisit it to expand it.
I wonder how visible the 3x2s are even, kind of having 4 of them all grouped together there, how effective they even would be. They seem kind of small. So maybe that's a nice happy medium, outside, no inside?
I agree with Gary on that. I'm comfortable with outside, but I wouldn't like to see it inside our gym.
What do you think, Rich?
I've never been enthusiastic about it, but quite frankly, my perspective has changed recently with I find it difficult to argue about the fact that we have a school and we have an opportunity to put things up. I feel kind of bad about complaining about that, I guess I would say. I think, the outdoor is okay. The indoor, if those banners were less promoting the companies and more sending a message of sportsmanship from so-and-so and good luck athletes, we love you from so-and-so, positive messages with a little bit of who it's from as opposed to, a big emblem of, company or something. I think we can accomplish 2 things if that's something that the donors would be interested in doing. Show your support, attach your name less obviously, but, bring something to the gym in terms of some positive message, some things like that. I guess if we're not able to formulate something like that, then probably leave that area blank. But if we're able to come up with something creative that sends a good message and gives the vendor a little bit of credit for doing that, then that makes it a little more positive.
Yeah, we're not in uncharted waters for other schools, but for us, we are. This is new, so, I don't think there's any bad ideas or wrong answers here. So I think what I'm hearing from you, Rich, would be if we could say something along the lines of, this company supports Wildcat Athletics, and that's up there, that might be okay, but definitely I want everyone to, or am I hearing just, let's try the outside, let's see how it goes, and then move forward from that?
Well, let's hear from Kathy. What are your thoughts?
I honestly applaud the efforts of the boosters in trying to get viable funding, and I think we're taking all the steps that are correct to keep it something that we're all comfortable with. So I totally support going forward. The kids, there's so many needs, and costs have risen so much. Any way we can help them, and we've almost seen our boosters disappear. Let's help them do the job that they're trying to do for the students.
So, Kathy, you're comfortable with everything that's been presented, the full program that was presented tonight?
Absolutely. And I totally trust the process of the steps being recommended to be taken, that they're going to follow our directions, and I have no issue with it.
Giovanni?
I agree too. I think it's a good way to help out the boosters. I also agree with keeping the advertisement outside, not putting it inside the school. I was going to ask though, in terms of, they're going to get funding from hopefully local businesses, or maybe it might be outside of West Chicago. So the boosters get that money, right, and then they divide it between all of the sports, or they just kind of is it based off tiers? How does that work?
Great question, Giovanni. The boosters are there to support all the sports. So they have this pile of money that they gather through a variety of fundraising, and then programs or coaches can come to them and solicit for specific items, and then they can support those requests. There is a way, though, if there is a donor or someone who wants to advertise, they can say that they would like up to 70% of that donation to go to a specific program. So if there is a business that, has a local businessman whose child is swimming on the team, they can say, hey, I want the majority of this money to go to the swim team. And that's not uncommon where a business can make a donation to an individual team. But in general, the boosters are there to support all of the athletic programs.
Awesome. Thank you all.
Yeah, I feel like, having been through this in detail, if we're taking a stand at not advertising product, then I guess I look at it less as advertising and more as local promotion and things. If we get a banner that says, so-and-so company, 1967 alumni, well, that's encouraging. That's something that generates some enthusiasm with students looking and saying, oh, that guy went here or that person went here and, they have a company now. That's encouraging. So, I mean, if we can be less commercial and more,
Less logo-centric?
less,
Yeah.
yeah. That again, what we're trying to do is tie in some value and some content and some encouragement, as opposed to how much money we can make.
For sure. And I don't want it to look like a minor league outfield wall by any means whatsoever. And Bob, to your point, I grappled with that as well too, about, are we just contributing to these kids being inundated with more advertisement? The conclusion I've come to, especially in the last 10 years, is everything social media wise, even YouTube that we use as a teaching tool all the time, they're all ad driven now. So the ads are here and it's saturated in so many ways. This does two things in my mind. One, it lets us capitalize to directly funnel some of that ad revenue to kids and their programming. But two, I think we can do this in a way where it shows partnership with local business as opposed to making us look like, a billboard. I think there's a way to do that. But, again, that would be something I'd want you to trust Dave and I to really work with the boosters to work that out. And then if we're not doing it right, hold us accountable. And then, when the terms of those agreements come due, then that probably dictates the future of the program.
Because you'll approve those before, they'll present you with like a
Goes to Mr.
drawing
Pater.
or whatever.
Mr. Pater
say,
brings
this
it
is
to
what
me.
we want to do. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
And obviously, you'll coach the boosters to have these discussions when they go out to sell the advertising, to promote something such as what Rich is describing.
And
Yeah.
big credit to the boosters. They've really not put feelers out. They haven't overstepped their bounds in any way. I mean, I think other groups would have done a little more homework and tentatively lined people up. They haven't done any of that. And I've talked to them on Monday, and I was very happy to hear how they've proceeded.
And for clarity, the boosters also supports the clubs in the school, so it's not just athletics. So they do take a look at the big picture of what the kids are involved with here.
So some of the revenue that would come in from selling advertisements at the football field might go to non-athletic related clubs. Are there percentages of how they divvy up the money, or they just whatever they feel is appropriate? Or?
My guess is this is the first go-around with that. In the past, I know when they've had concessions, they've offered it to any team, any club who wanted to work them as a way to raise funds for their activities. So, this is uncharted waters, and that could be something that they would figure out.
They're all eligible for grants.
Correct.
It's incumbent upon the team or the club to ask, right? Okay.
Exactly.
Correct.
I guess the message to the boosters was this money shouldn't all go to football.
Correct.
All right, so in the go-around, it sounds like we've got 3 board members that like the idea of outdoor ads only, 2 board members that are happy and comfortable with the full program, 1 board member that wants to add the indoor signs if they're more positive messages, less advertising related, and then 1 board member that's kind of uncomfortable with the advertising. So if you go by majority, it sounds like we've got a majority that wants to start with just the outdoor, unless anybody wants to change their opinions at this point. That what everybody's comfortable with? Just start with the outdoor and hold off on the indoor?
Yes.
Kathy, Giovanni, are you comfortable with that?
Yes.
Kathy?
I'm fine with it. Whatever the board feels, I'm totally comfortable with however we do it. So
Okay,
I
the
have
other,
no issue. I'll vote for us moving forward however it's set up.
sounds like the other question is, are we all comfortable with a 2-year commitment? Or because this is a new thing, would we rather step into the waters gently and go 1 year and see what impact it has?
I think if you don't do 2 years, you're minimizing any impact. So what businesses are going to spend money for 1 year that may be pulled right away?
I think especially if it's exterior only, I think 2 years is fine.
Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Rich? Kathy, Giovanni, you're comfortable with 2 years?
Yep, I'm on too.
Absolutely.
All right, sounds like that gives you your answer then.
Sounds good.
Do you think they're going to be comfortable with the eliminating the indoor for now?
We'll find out. I think I don't want to speak for them, but I think it's a step forward, and it's an opportunity to prove, that this can work and this can be a steady stream and something positive. So I'll work with them and give you an update in the near future.
We're not precluding it. We just like to step into it softly and see how it goes and see if there's any issues that we have to address before we do interior.
See how it's received by the student body and by the public?
Sounds great.
Well, the eight large are going to generate quite a bit more business than the 4 small, so it's not like, we're taking away a significant portion of their revenue.
So if they don't sell all 8 at first, just prioritize the ones blocking the porta potties.
Got it. Yep. Ironically, it's a porta potty company who's
Just
going to buy
start filling
that
it
sign.
that way. That would be an interesting connection there. All right, then, that brings us to partnership with College of DuPage.
All right, I've got this one too, so I'll try to be quick here, I promise. Just a little update for the board about something that will probably come your way more formally in the future. And Mr. Oberg, can I ask you to pass those out to everybody? Sure. Thank you very much, sir. A little bit of background and context. So for the last 10 years, I'll just say the idea of establishing dual credit partnerships and other academic partnerships between community colleges and their local high schools has really taken off. College of DuPage is the largest community college, one of the largest universities in the entire state. So they're massive. They can be tough to partner with. They've got over 40 high school partners that they are obligated to work with. So they often have struggled to get that foothold to establish dual credit programs, concurrent enrollment programs, other programming at COD that has worked for them to have good partnerships with the high schools. So I will say COD has been, my 3 years here, it's my first time partnering with COD. They've been great to work with. Recently met with 2 representatives from COD who really wanted to find some unique and different ways to partnership. And they're very interested in partnering with West Chicago just because the community we serve is a community that they very much want to serve better. So some great dialogue. And one of the conclusions we came to was that the question has always been, how do we get kids to go to COD? How do we get them to access their local community college, either for a 2-year degree or summer classes or getting a gen ed requirement out of the way before they start at a different university, whatever it might be.
Sell them a banner.
Meeting adjourned. Actually,
They
you know
can
what?
block the porta
Now that you
potties.
mention it, Rich, I might ask him. But we really talked about how do we look at it differently? How do we bring COD to the kids? And one of the challenges is it always happens this way. About every 3 or 4 months, COD calls a summit. They get together. We have conversations about possible ways, theoretical ways we get partnership. We go our separate ways. Each group looks at the hurdles, the barriers, the challenges, come back together, and then 3 months later, not a whole lot has moved. If you think public K-12 ed moves slow, you should meet higher ed. It moves way slower than we do. Bob has a knowing laugh over there, just a little bit. this is a different way to look at it. And so I want to go through this a little bit, but we looked at a different type of partnership that I think could be really exciting. So the purpose of this would be that we want to provide some seamless opportunities for students to complete the enrollment process. And we really would start with targeting the avid kids, but when you look through the document I gave you, and again, no rush in that document, it really could be worked out for so many other kids in our school as well too. But to really make it seamless for them to enroll in dual credit and other credits that help them matriculate to COD, to access it in whatever way they need to upon graduation. And so here are some of the key objectives that we would really have here. Provide early college access and planning to students in a high quality partnership. Grant and sustain more dual credit courses, meaning, and the big piece of this here, and I'll get to, is that they would have somebody on campus here, the same person, regularly every 1 to 2 weeks. We would give them an office space. They would be here. So those partnerships and conversations with division heads, with myself, with assistant principals, can happen organically and consistently. Right now, they don't happen organically, and they happen few and far between. We could really have ongoing dialogue about how to build those courses. It could increase their presence here in some really good ways. But also what I was excited about is the school and community support that COD is going to be able to give us and to help us develop pipelines for kids for certificated programs, apprenticeships, GED credentials, if we have people who need to access that as well. This is one of the key highlights I really wanted to highlight, and I believe it's in section 1, it's letter F in the document that you've gotten here. Consistent presence from a college liaison at West Chicago High School. We've worked with the same person for a little while. She helps with our FAFSA nights. She's wonderful. Dr. Chang, I believe she worked with us prior to you becoming superintendent. She was on campus pretty consistently. She would become our official liaison, and she would be here at least once every 2 weeks, but ideally we would look to make that even more. They could provide on-site advising for students. So if they have a question about COD, it's not a matter of, reach out to this person or make an appointment to go on campus. Nope. You make the appointment right here, come in your lunch hour, and you can see the COD rep, on a regular basis. They would help us, again, continue to help us with our FAFSA educational program. Continuing education liaison would also assist with application and onboarding of prospective students in GED and or adult education courses. And also provide bilingual and Spanish information sessions for parents as well too. We're already doing some of this, but this would formalize those things that they're really kind of doing out of the goodness of their heart right now. I'm excited about it. I think it could help us add more evening programming in a variety of ways. We took a tour and are very excited about our machine shop on the east end of the building, and we see some opportunity that we could offer some adult programming and certificated programs through there. The hurdle has always been their size and the inability to meet on an ongoing basis to make the actual partnerships that allow programs like that to actually come to fruition and grow and flourish and be something effective for the community. So this agreement, having somebody here who almost kind of melds into our staff and can be part of leadership meetings when appropriate, I'm excited because I think it could really do some fantastic things for us. I think it's win-win. There really is no obligation on our end. The obligation is that we continue to make efforts to expand dual credit offerings and continue to liaise with them as we give kids options about how to use their community college, which is at their doorstep anyway. So I'm very excited about it. I'm happy they reached out and happy that we've got a positive enough dynamic with them to try this really unique partnership with them.
It seems like this would be a good fit for SSI chapter or something. To let students know what's available and how to work into that if they're interested.
Yeah, so when that person's here, we could have, senior dens could come to the auditorium. They can meet with multiple groups at one time. They can meet one-on-one with kids. That time becomes a vehicle that could get used in a lot of ways, and this person becomes a really important part of that too. I see it. Yes, I definitely see that being a possibility.
This seems like a fantastic initiative. Community colleges are an incredible resource that a lot of people in the community really have no idea what it can do for them. So this is a wonderful, wonderful way to get that connection.
2 questions. So Office of Student Financial Assistance, what does that look like? Or what would that look like for a student to access the Office of Student Financial Assistance?
Yeah. So the liaison they have, she does this already. She's very well versed in it. I believe she actually used to work in that office. But she can educate kids and help them complete the applications for, hey, if this tuition isn't feasible for you, fill this out, or here, I'm gonna take your application right now and I'm gonna drop it off at this person's office, or here's how you submit it. Oftentimes we're connecting the kids with the college and just hoping or assuming they're gonna follow up on that appointment. They're gonna complete that paperwork. Now it's, nope, go next door to your counselor's office where the COD rep is, and now let's hit submit. And let's finish these things right now, or let's ask that question directly to a COD rep instead of sending the question, waiting for the reply, sending down for the kid a week later, coming back. It just eliminates so many middle barriers to it. And then it's going to allow direct answers from the source and not a counselor who probably knows, maybe has to check, or maybe knows but isn't quite sure. It's seamless in that way.
So it's more of a documentation, like one through the application, or a guide through the application process.
Which, as you know, having a college-age kid now, very complicated, has a lot of hurdles to it. Families who might struggle with that for a variety of reasons, they hear it from the horse's mouth. Here's what to do. Okay, if you're not documented, that's fine. Here's what you do with this. Your parents don't want to share their financial information, that's fine. Here's what you do with this. So it really is helpful in that regard.
And Penny, I would add that you know that every student does a FAFSA form now, so that in and of itself is a very complicated task. I think the benefit of having this counselor here to talk about the financial assistance is there are more costs associated, other costs, ancillary costs going to college. And that's where this person is able to provide connections and resources beyond just even the general FAFSA requirement, which I think a lot of times kids wonder about. Because there are, again, other costs than just the tuition when you want to take classes, and that's a huge benefit.
And what would the outreach liaison, what does that look like?
It's the same person. So currently, she attends our financial aid night, and she works with she presents in Spanish and works with our families in that way. But because she'd be here regularly, this would allow us the opportunity to plan programming outside of that is geared toward reaching out to parents.
So that would be more specific to navigating the process of admission into COD. Not specific outreach in the community, but specific outreach to navigating the process of admission at COD.
Correct. It would be outreach centered on accessing COD.
Okay.
Yes.
I just want to make that clear. And then is this person bilingual?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yep.
COD has credit transfer arrangements with many of the major universities. Is that something that this person will be able to share and explain? What are the advantages? If you want to go to a four-year college, but here's the advantage of starting out at a community college, and then you can move to, however many with whatever degrees you want to pursue and things like that.
Yeah, they'd be great at that. That's been streamlined. But yeah, when you're looking at private or public universities after a community college, that gets complicated, and they could definitely help with that.
Any other questions or comments? Kathy, did you have something to say?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Bob. I know, Will, that you don't have all of the little nitty-gritty details right now, and I just want you to know that I think this is the most exciting thing that's on this whole agenda tonight. It's something that Dr. Chang, I know, worked on for years until COD kind of got involved in major lawsuits, and there weren't many people available. But to make this happen for our students is huge. And to bring someone who is consistently going to be there and available and bilingual on top of it is, I just love it. Thank you very much.
No, absolutely. We're excited for it, and we got a little bit of back and forth we're going to do with COD just on a few details, but I'm hoping to bring a formal MOU to you in the near future for formal board approval. But we got the draft. I definitely wanted to get some of the highlights in front of you, but also give you a copy of that as it is. And I would just say feel free to reach out to me Mr. Egan and I have been working hand in hand with COD. Reach out, and we're happy to either answer questions or take those questions back to COD as we continue to hammer out the logistics.
And this will start
After the
next
meeting,
year?
will you email that so Giovanni and I can see it too?
Yeah, Kathy, my apologies. I'll get that over to you in just a few minutes.
Oh, that's okay. It's no big deal, but I'd love to see what you've got. I'm just, as I said, very, very, very excited about this.
Like it starts
Agreed.
June 1st, according to this.
They would like to go June 1st. They're flexible. It could be July 1. It could be August 1.
This will be a 12-month.
This is a 12-month. The hope and the goal, as we sat with the COD admin, would be that we would want to grow this. This would be step one, and even maybe make it a more regular person on campus and try to have this be the seed that maybe grows into something even bigger. So it's not just a 1 year, hey, let's see what happens. The intent is it's a long-term partnership in a way that we almost kind of become an example of how a massive institution like COD can partner with smaller high schools within its attendance area. And then we can really have those productive programs that grow.
And the liaison will be available during registrations and things like that?
They have conveyed so much flexibility and all of that they can make themselves available for those seminal events that we want to make sure they're around for.
I think this is a really exciting opportunity for us and for our students. I think COD is a tremendous resource for the area, and to have that close connection, I think that's just wonderful for our students.
Excited.
Any other comments or questions? All right, then. That moves us to 2022 tax levy discussion.
Thank you. So as I'm preparing the budget for next year, I wanted to propose two options to the board with regards to the 2022 tax levy, given the high CPI value in December. One is to request a tax levy that is below 5%, which is what we have historically done. However, doing so does not capture the full possible amount for the district. The other option is to levy beyond the 5% to receive the full amount, but doing so would require us to hold a truth and taxation hearing. This option would affect the 2022 tax levy, which will in turn affect the fiscal year 2023 budget. So as a reminder, a truth and taxation hearing needs to occur if a taxing entity requests an increase of more than 5% over last year's levy. The truth and taxation hearing basically requires the district to post additional notices for the public and will extend the tax levy process by a month or so. As we know, the CPI last December was 7%, which is the value that we use to calculate the next year's tax levy. Although PTEL limits that increase to 5%, PTEL does not limit the capture of new construction, which I'm still expecting to be around 15 million, which, by the way, is a complete guess. But last year we were at $22 million, so I'm expecting a little less new construction next year. If we include new construction, it would require the district to do a truth and taxation hearing, as the increase would be then more than 5%. Based on preliminary calculations, limiting the increase to 5% and not including the new construction would reduce the levy by about $250,000. Based on the facility and academic needs of the school, I would recommend including the new construction in the tax levy, which would mean a truth and taxation hearing would be required. So again, I'm just looking to get a little direction from the board tonight as I'm preparing that budget, if even the truth and taxation hearing is even a possibility.
So how would that work then? When would that happen? Like, what would the time frame look like?
The truth and taxation hearing we would start that process in September, October, as we would have to have that levy approved in December, and so it'd be a month before we'd have to go through that process and make sure that it's a public notice and everything.
So is it like a special, like 15 or 20-minute meeting prior to a board meeting where anybody who had any concerns about the tax levy would be able to express those concerns?
Correct.
Well, I'd be foregoing for as much as we can get, because from year to year, you're always based on what your previous year was. So whatever we would get in addition, 0.5%, 0.75%, that's going to continue to compound.
Correct. If it's $15 million, that the tax levy, it'd be like 6.2% increase over last year's levy, give or take.
Any other thoughts or comments or questions about where we want to go with this?
So, just to clarify, it's going to be a tax increase of 6.2%.
It'd be an increase over last year's tax levy of about 6.2%.
Rather than limited at 5.
Correct. And obviously, if I'm going through my budget and determine that we don't have the facility needs and we don't have the academic funding, I would limit the levy to whatever our actual needs are. So if I can't justify the 6.2% increase as I'm going through that budget process, and I can't justify the needs within that budget, then I would lower that to the 5% or whatever the needs are of the district.
Does anybody feel it necessary to keep it artificially at the 5%, or are we comfortable with letting it go beyond that and have the hearing if necessary?
I personally would prefer to see it stay below the cap.
If that's possible. What's the difference between 5% and like 6.2%? Meaning how much would we take in?
It'd be about $250,000.
Send a message that we're trying to be responsible.
Right. And 250,000, I don't know if it's worth that.
It's
But responsible also means being good stewards and having the facilities and the resources to keep things going. Because, in a couple of years, all of this additional funding is going to go away. We're going to have established an expectation, and then, we're going to kind of have the bottom drop out. And so, whatever we can get to kind of beef it up when the CPI drops back to 2%, we're going to at least have a better foundation.
I saw some head nodding, but Kathy and Giovanni, I can't see your heads. So if you could both let me know what your thoughts are on this.
I would love to. I honestly am strongly opposed to raising it above the cap if we can avoid it, but I think it's wise to keep the door open. I think our taxes are capped out here in this area, especially for the community we're serving. But the flip side of that is I think sometime in the next few months we're going to see the economy take a drastic turn, and it's going to be a non-issue. So I would anticipate needing to have the truth in taxation meeting, but at the same time knowing that the full intent of the board is to be very considerate of the taxpayer base in our community and be very conservative with that.
Giovanni?
So basically tap dance as much as you can.
Giovanni, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I kind of thinking kind of like what Kathy's saying. I'm in the same boat. I'm hesitant to increase it, especially for community. But yeah, I guess it's the way stuff's going with the economy, and again, I don't know, but it's just, I would want to keep it at the cap. The same thing, open to the idea of that. And I do know that funding is going to end as well with Hacer and all that. So yeah, I would be at the cap, but open to the idea of it.
Okay, so what is our time frame on when this decision actually has to be made? 'Cause it sounds like there's definitely some mixed opinions here.
Well, obviously, as I'm preparing the budget, we're going to go through that budget process. We'll have the tentative budget in August and then approve that budget in September.
So were you needing a definite 5%, or can you go above it tonight, or do you have a little more time and you can play with the numbers and then bring us back some numbers to kind of make the case, okay, now we need to decide which way we're going?
Yeah, we have a little bit of time, I guess, so as I'm preparing that budget and as I'm really going through those numbers. I'm hearing a sense from the board that if I can keep it under 5%, then let's make sure to do that. If I can really justify maybe going over that 5% for some actual real needs, then maybe we can do that, and we'll go through that as we go through the budget process.
It definitely sounds like the board wants to be fiscally careful, but obviously this is a major decision point, and that could be a lot of money. So, yeah, you'll bring some more numbers back to us as to what we may need and why we may need that if we do need to go above it.
But planning the hearing doesn't obligate us to go above the cap. It just allows us if we need to, right?
Gives us
But
an option.
there's lots of districts that do a truth and taxation hearing every year, no matter what they're levying, if it's over 5% or under 5%. You can always do the truth and taxation hearing. That doesn't hurt anything.
So it's more work on your end, but it gives us options if we get to that point.
Sure.
All right, so you'll update us as you go further through the budgeting process, then, it sounds like.
Correct. I will.
All right, then, that brings us to supplemental tax levy discussion.
Due to recent amendments in the property tax code, section 18-233, beginning with the 2021 tax levy, which is this current tax levy that we'll start collecting next month, taxing districts will have their levy extensions increased in the amount equal to the refunds from the assessment reductions in the prior 12-month period. The 2021 supplemental tax levy extension is about $64,000 for this year. So it's just something that I wanted the board to be aware of, that this happening, that started this year.
Any questions about that? Hearing none, we move on to entrance A flooring replacement.
So when the construction project ended, there were a few areas that were considered to be alternates and were not selected for completion. One of those areas was the flooring near entrance A, which would include all the tile flooring from entrance A down that hallway to the cafeteria, down the 2 hallways on either side, and then also includes 2 art classrooms and 2 of the SRC classrooms, which are across the community room. As Consolidated Flooring installed most of the flooring during our construction project, requested a quote from them through the TIPS Purchasing Cooperative, of which we are a member, and they provided a quote of $270,147. DLA has looked at that. They've noted the quote as reasonable based on the overall square footage and their expected cost. I plan to bring that to the board in May for approval. I'm still working on some of their availability and some of the lead times on the product, and how many classrooms that we'll actually plan on completing this summer. That we have the 4 classrooms are like an alternate that maybe we'll finish next summer, and then also based off of their lead times and availability, which fiscal year this project would actually fall under, if they can get it done before the end of this fiscal year, or if it'll be a next fiscal year project.
Is that at that entrance, the floor tile, is that the one where it's got like the design in the floor tile?
Correct.
Okay, and would we lose that, or would that be maintained?
Well, we would lose that, but we would replace it with something similar that's located at entrance C that we just installed with the construction project.
Okay, so we will still have the fancy design in the floor, it just will be replaced then, basically.
Correct.
Any questions or comments? All right, then. New driver's education car lease.
Based on enrollment, we expect to need an additional driver's ed car for the next few years. At the May board meeting, and with consideration of the current market and vehicle availability, I'll be requesting authorization to procure a lease vehicle on a 3-year lease that will be under $250 per month with $5,000 down. That's a little more than what we have been paying. We're at about $190 a month, and we would put I think we put $4,000 down on the last one. So all dealers released new incentives today, and from the initial research, it still appears that these parameters will work. We're looking at Nissan Sentra or Toyota Corolla, Honda Civic, something like that. So I'll bring that to the board in May.
Any questions or comments? All right, then. Arcade column replacement.
Based on preliminary discussions with DLA regarding the arcade columns, administration requested that a structural engineer check the columns to get a sense of when they will need to be replaced. Just to make sure everybody knows where the arcade is, this is the area that's on the east side of the building, just north of the auditorium entrance, and has that walkway underneath the second floor. There's a total of 12 columns in that walkway. This came up as we reviewed a draft of the facility plan that DLA is currently creating, which we hope to bring to the board and finalize in June. After meeting with the structural engineer, it was noted that one column should be shored up soon, and with a total of 3 columns that should be replaced sooner rather than later. So out of an abundance of caution, we're shoring up all 3 columns this week with the replacement to happen this summer. Considering the recommendation from the structural engineer, we're moving to secure a contractor, which will be Integral Construction, since they're already doing some business with us, and they'll start that project as soon as school is out. Cost to replace those columns estimated at $15,000 per column, and I'll update the board at the May board meeting with a little more details about that.
Any questions on the columns?
While we're on the subject of the arcade, I have felt recently that since we have such a nice new entrance, that the arcade is kind of an anachronism. It used to be the entrance to the school. Now it's, in my opinion, wasted space, and I'm thinking we should look into doing something else with that.
Well, as Dan and I met with Bill and Peter Ponarelli to just review that draft of that facility plan, that topic did come up in terms of just how we could better utilize that space in light of everything that has already happened with the school. So that is that's something that we're going to chase down.
So can we delay on spending a lot of money on the columns to just get them safe, with the potential that there's other things that DLA can come up with for that area?
The columns are necessary, so we need to do that this summer. But as part of the facility plan review, and when we bring it to the board, that could definitely be a part of our discussion to see how we could better utilize that space, for sure.
Any other questions or comments on arcade columns? All right, then, that brings us to committee scheduling. The reason this came up is so that we can have a bit of a board discussion about committee scheduling. This came up because of the recently scheduled Parent-Teacher Advisory Committee meeting, which was scheduled for, I think, 7:45 in the morning on, I think it was originally today, wasn't it? So this board had had some discussions last year about committee meetings and trying to make them more open, transparent, accessible, that sort of thing. And so the question then comes up, Parent-Teacher Advisory Committee meeting, looking at the agenda, there were some topics that certainly seemed like things that maybe a lot of parents might have some interest in, things like the mental health days, things like dress code at the school. And I personally was a bit concerned that while a few parents could possibly make a 7:45 in the morning Tuesday meeting, the majority of parents are going to not be able to attend that meeting to either see what's being discussed or possibly participate in public comment. So while a committee has to meet at a time and place that is accessible for the members of the committee, it's a valid discussion topic of how important to this board is it that a committee, as much as possible, wherever possible, be at a time and place where it's more likely to be accessible to other members of our community. So kind of throwing that topic out there for discussion.
And out of curiosity, who chose the time of this meeting? Was it the actual committee last time, or how did that come about that it was chosen for 7:45?
Great question, Kathy, and Penny, you can fill my memory on some of this too. When the committee last met in October, I think we had a brief discussion as we were wrapping up about whether or not this worked for some of them or didn't work. The time seemed to work for the majority of the committee. When I reached out again this time, everyone at 7:45 was able to make it. And again, that's members of the committee, not necessarily members of the public who would attend as opposed to participate. Although we did have some parent participation in October.
Okay, then my next question is, what is the makeup of the committee? How many students, teachers, parents, administrators
Yeah.
are part of that committee?
Currently, I'm going to pull up the invite. 2 teachers, 5 students, 5 parents, and 4 admin, and that includes myself, as well as 1 board member, and Penny is the board liaison to the committee.
Does having it at 7:30 in the morning at scheduled time meet the Open Meetings Act?
I believe so. Met it last time.
So these meetings are typically run like normal meetings. They're not interactive other than the opportunity to present some questions at the beginning of the meeting. It's not a forum or Q&A kind of thing, correct?
No, correct. It operates and functions just like a board committee. It goes through the same procedures as such, so it is not a forum, correct?
And
How many
it would be
public
live streamed.
members showed up at past meetings?
Prior to my time, I couldn't tell you.
I think at one point, I think one of the, go ahead. I think at one point, one of the concerns was about the fact that it wasn't necessarily open to the public. So I think that we scheduled based on the committee, but I think that we now are opening it up for public participation. So I think that even though I can completely understand there may be some scheduling conflicts based on how we make up this committee, with teachers, probably having to stay after school hours, students having to stay after school hours. I do think that there is something to be said about the fact that we would probably be more, luckier at having parents attend or community members attend if we held it at times after work hours.
Now, in the past, as you said about it, opening it up, I think we didn't always post this
Correct.
meeting, so the committee knew
Correct.
when they were meeting, but the community, maybe they knew the committee existed, but they didn't know anything about its meeting times or places.
Right.
The October meeting did have
No,
some, you mean
I'm
prior to
saying
that?
prior to
Prior to
October.
that.
That was a change that we made.
Understood.
Yes.
So we're
I'm
not
sorry, I
running
didn't hear that. There were a couple people talking at the same time.
There was a change that was made effective with the October meeting where we actually started publicizing the meeting so the community would know. Prior to that, the PTAC meetings, the committee knew when they were meeting and where, but the community was not aware. They were not, essentially, they weren't invited.
It wasn't posted.
Correct.
so we're not running
Okay,
it.
so we're posting it now. We're live streaming it now. We have a community that works all kinds of hours at, not necessarily all 9-to-5 jobs. But many of the committee members would not be able to participate at night if you changed it for all kinds of reasons. Number one, if teachers go home, are they going to come back and attend? Students may have activities that happen in the evening or homework to do or jobs that they do. So if we have no committee, then we have absolutely no transparency because there is no committee. If we make it as accessible as possible for the community, including inviting participation in other ways, if they can't physically be there, would that not be a better way to do it than not having a committee?
Especially if we're recording
I mean,
it.
I think parents' input is huge, and inviting parents in is huge, but I don't know that having it at night is going to make it any more accessible. That's an assumption that we're making without having any facts whatsoever. Many parents have children they have to take care of, or meals a family they have to care for, or jobs that they have to go to, that they're not available to just run out. And that's evident in the lack of people who attend any of our meetings. No matter how much they are caring or concerned about it, they are not coming to the meetings. So why wouldn't we focus on what makes the meeting effective and communicating it and giving people access in ways, very different ways, instead of changing a meeting and making it totally ineffective for the committee members? That, to me, just invalidates the reason to have a committee.
Is there
I
any
don't
way to
think-
poll the parents? Will?
The parents on the committee?
No, just the parents in general, like in the school. Like, is this something you'd be interested in attending if we held these in the afternoon as opposed to the morning? I mean, is that,
We do at times struggle with a response rate.
Yeah.
And then whether or not that's indicative of the intent or not, it's hard to say. We
I don't think
can.
so.
I don't know if it'll give us actionable information, though.
We're
but we could.
we're having an open board meeting right this very minute, and we'll see how many people are in the audience.
Yeah, but
you're talking
I
about-
also don't think that we
No,
can, go ahead, I'm
No,
sorry.
I'm saying it matters. It absolutely matters. Especially if we're going to record we live stream and record these, they have access to the information. It's not like they miss it. I mean, I agree, if we were not putting out the recordings of it, there's the opportunity there where they would miss it. They'd be denied access to it. But here, they have access to information. These are board meetings, these are committee meetings. They don't have the ability to directly communicate with the people who are conducting the meeting. They're there as attendees, as viewers of it. So even if you're broadcasting information at a later time, they're getting the same information.
There is a
I can
public
say-
comment component. There's a
Right.
public
Well,
comment
and-
aspect
And I
of it.
also have to say-
Also add a link or a way to ask people, for people to ask questions live online, or to a link to send questions about anything so that they could interact with us and get some answers. I absolutely would not want to cut people's ability to communicate. I want to see that improved. And any way we can do it, but I don't think making a committee totally inconvenient for the members is the way to do that. And with that, can anyone, Will, Moses, anyone tell me what percentage of families attend our parent-teacher conferences? What percentage of the population attends parent-teacher conferences that are open all day and evening and available for everyone?
Our fall data is better than our spring data. I don't have it on my fingertips. I can get it, but it's probably in the ballpark of 20%.
It's around 500.
I knew
Yeah,
you wouldn't.
a quarter,
and I didn't
20,
expect
25.
you to, and I should have asked that ahead of time. But I know from my years of going to parent-teacher conferences that over and over, the teachers would say so many people don't bother to attend. And we did everything possible to make that accessible. And I think it's improved greatly in the last few years compared to, 10 years ago when my kids were in school. But, I mean, I think we need to be realistic. We can only stretch so much. Let's look at a better way of accessibility instead of some fixated opinion about at 7 o'clock on Wednesday evenings, everybody's available, because that is not the reality in the community we live in.
I don't think it's fixated. I think that we just have to be cognizant that there is a better opportunity for people to attend after work hours. And I also think that we didn't necessarily we didn't prove that it was ineffective because we've never opened it up to the public until recently.
Well, we
So-
have had other things that were open up to the public, though. So you're saying you think that there are better ways, but is there any evidence of that? Whereas there is evidence that when we open other things up to the public, they're still not coming. Our
But
board
I don't
meetings,
necessarily
our
know-
committee of the whole meetings, people are not coming.
It also
So
can.
why would we move that committee meeting to the evening and inconvenience people on the committee.
But we don't know that it's
That's just-
inconvenient, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And there's plenty of other school events that happen at 7 o'clock. Another thing I want to say is we don't meet that often. I mean, this year we've met one time. So opening it up for parents to attend twice a year at 7 o'clock, I don't think is asking. And then this committee specifically targets parents' ability to come in and engage and have that forum to kind of see how to best support their students. I think it's a huge opportunity that we should consider, and I don't think it's too much to ask.
I mean, I personally wish that there were more people from the community that would attend our board meetings and committee of the whole meetings and stuff like that. But in looking at the agendas that we post and looking at the agenda for tonight's meeting, I could see a lot of parents in the community looking at that and thinking, all right, you know, nothing I'm really that excited about, going to go out and go to that meeting. But if they look at a meeting and it says a parent-teacher advisory, so it's an opportunity for parents and teachers to have a dialogue, and it's talking about dress code, which is a really hot topic for families in the community. It's talking about these new mental health days,
Right.
which I know from my own family, and I'm sure a lot of families in the community probably have some differing opinions on how that's playing out. I would think those are things that a lot of families would say, you know what, I want to find out what's going on about this, or I've got some comments about this.
And Bob, I also want to say too, is you stated something that's, you know, valid. We meet, I mean, right now we're meeting twice a month. These meetings don't happen that often.
When was the meeting scheduled for the morning?
Today at 7:45.
When was it posted?
I think Thursday or Wednesday.
Okay.
Friday.
I
Friday?
think, you know, one of the problems we have is that we expect to post a meeting 48 hours in advance and have people be available to
Agreed.
come. If we're going to do something like that and it's going to be successful, you should be scheduled a month in advance so people can make their plans.
Absolutely.
Have an agenda. You can't, I mean, we're used to that, but the general public, you know, by the time they actually even get the posting, it might be the night before or the day. So it sounds like you're changing the format from a committee meeting to more of a forum where people are going to come and ask questions and get information, as opposed to the way we sort of define a committee as we meet, we take questions or comments, but then we don't interact necessarily with the public.
But I think that is, I mean, we do have public comment now during that meeting. So I know that in the past, that has been a concern.
Right, but what you're saying is you want people to come and be more interactive, ask questions and get answers, not just
But public
have
comment
public
is
comment.
more interaction.
Well, no, because we don't respond to public comment.
But they're able to state their concerns.
Right,
So
but
they're
that doesn't.
representatives on the
Right.
Why
committee.
wouldn't we then instead have a public forum twice a year where they actually can come and ask questions and have interaction? That might actually bring people and have some effect. But having people attend the meeting, I don't think, unless they have a personal issue with it, i.e. the kid was just kicked out of school because they wore something appropriate, or it's not going to happen. I would love to have way more parent interaction, but I don't think that adjusting this meeting schedule is the way to do it. If
But you
we
do
could
make
do a public forum, I absolutely would support seeing that happen.
But you do make a very good point as far as the posting of agendas, especially for a committee like this that normally only meets twice a year. It would make all the sense in the world for that agenda to be posted a lot more in advance than just a few days, especially if we want to encourage community participation.
And ideally, it would be the same, it would be the same interval too. You don't just
Correct.
randomly, you know, set it up. Like, we know first Tuesday, third Tuesday, we get a pattern. If you had a time where you're always going to have this meeting twice a year, and it's
October,
always such and such and such and
Yeah.
such, people can plan for it. They can get their schedule, they can ask for a couple hours off work if they need to. They can get a babysitter if they need to, and they can come prepared, have an interaction, get good answers, rather than, oh, I see they're having that meeting I wanted to go to. It's too late for me to do anything about it.
And I also want to say that, again, this is a way to engage our parents, and I think it's an opportunity. And I don't think that we've implemented changes until now, and I think that they're worth seeing them through and see what the benefits are. I don't think we've tried long enough.
The first time that we publicized this as an open meeting was last October, correct?
Correct.
And we did have some
Yes,
public
we
that
did.
came to, how many people came to it then?
I don't remember, but
It's
there's some
about
people in the
five.
audience.
Two or three?
No,
It might have been one
four.
came and left quickly, and then I think two stayed.
I remember like 3 or 4.
I think it was 3 or 4.
And that was the first time we had done it as an open
Yes.
posting, and it was at the similar 7:30 or 7:45 in the
Yes.
morning. Okay, so at least that's some indication that
Exactly.
there's some interest.
Exactly.
Yeah, and
Just
just
going off of that, I think about obviously two different things, but like think about the BPAC meeting. I mean, that held in the evenings, and there was a really good turnout in terms of numbers for that. And so, I mean, I know again as you guys talked about, some of you were like talking about not making it to a forum, but again, just the idea of having that, just being there for them at that time, just being accessible and just continuing with that, the idea of being open and transparent with them, and they can make the comments and open comments. And I think that would work. At 7 p.m. would be more accessible than at 7:45 in the morning.
Yes,
I
thanks
think
to
we're
Ronnie
gonna
for mentioning the
just
BPAC.
trying to bundle all the comments together. I think, and for Will to know how to move forward with the PTAC, I think it's perfectly acceptable and fine for the committee to throw out all options for meeting dates and times that are both in the morning and evening. I mean, I think that's perfectly fine and perfectly agreeable. Honestly, what was challenging about this one was the timing of when to cancel after the meeting was already posted, and knowing that the meeting was scheduled, posted on Friday and supposed to meet today, and then having to completely circle the wagons again and try to reset and try to find a date when we're so close to the year. That part was the most exhausting and frustrating piece, was that it was already posted, it was some time and date that the committee agreed to, and then to have to put the brakes on that and try to do something at the busiest time of year is what's the most challenging. I think moving forward, the committee could easily throw out all times options as what makes the committee work and make available. But that was part of the circumstances with what happened this past weekend as well.
I would say, having a forum doesn't necessarily mean you have to do that instead of the PTAC meeting. I think the PTAC meeting still serves a purpose, and then maybe, sometime after that, you have a forum where you discuss things and get interaction. It doesn't leave the community feeling very good when we're scheduling meetings and canceling meetings and looking like, we're operating like we're afraid of our own shadow. We need to, set a course, be decisive, and do the things that we say we do. And I think the PTAC, we're required to have that. So I don't know that shifting that to a forum necessarily meets the requirements of having the PTAC meeting.
Let me.
Rich, I actually think having a PTAC meeting that meets the needs of the committee, and then following it up with a forum to discuss those topics that really were pertinent to the community, where you might have a lot of community interest, would make a whole lot of sense. Because that is where people could come in and actually get answers and express concerns and it would be so much more interactive. A meeting where all they do is get to say their concerns, and then it's like a silent wall because nobody's responding. But it might be a great way for the PTAC meeting to serve a viable function that expands topics and concerns to the community and makes it accessible. I would think it would be a something very worthwhile to consider doing that. And doing a combination of that, of bringing stuff out to the community.
Yeah, if I could just summarize to make sure I've got a good understanding for moving forward, because Moses' point, it is challenging, and we're on the struggle bus a little bit right now to try to get a night where the current committee can meet. So right now, I have not heard back from everybody, and I'm working on it, but we're trying hard to find an opportunity to do so. But it may either end up being a different time of day, or it might be some different committee members. But moving forward, what I'm hearing, the desire for public participation and to interact, the PTAC itself is not our design. The design of that function really isn't that. It is a policy advisory committee to the board. So we have worked hard to find a representative group of students, teachers, parents, administrators, to make sure the right people at the table to have that right conversation about possible recommendations. An interactive, anybody who can come wants to come, and they want to be heard, or they want to interact with admin or teachers or others to voice concerns about those topics or similar topics. That would be a forum, a more informal, large designed situation. We had something, that forum structure has been successful in some of the BPAC meetings, Giovanni, that you mentioned, as well as our attendance workshop that we hosted a few weeks back. So that could be something within concert, but I would hate to try to jam too many purposes into one meeting. So I'll make a statement, and then you tell me if this is how the board wants me to
Well,
proceed.
let's hold a second, because Lynn, what thoughts do you have on this? You haven't really said much.
I'm happy to move the meetings to what would be probably a better time for the public in general. My question was, when the student representatives, do we pull them out of class for this?
They miss the first hour and a half, the first period and a half, yeah.
So it would alleviate that. But yeah, I understand the difficulty in planning meetings and coordinating times is very difficult. But I think it's worth a shot. I just think it's worth a shot to see how it pans out. And if it's beneficial, it's beneficial. If it doesn't work out, then maybe we can go back to having it during the school day.
So it sounds like the perspective from the board is, if at all possible, let's try to make it more accessible to more people in the evening. Obviously, you can't have a committee meeting if the committee itself can't meet, so you've got to have that. But within that, if the committee can meet at a time that's in the evening where it's more likely to be accessible to the community, that sounds like the way the board would prefer things to be. Given the time crunch right now, I think it's okay. Can you? If you can, great. If not, the next PTAC after this, that the PTAC meeting should focus on, let's schedule it in an evening time if at all possible.
Are we considering like right after school as opposed to right before school?
I don't think that speaks to the concerns that have been brought up, though. I think 3:30 is not much more accessible
That's
than 7:30.
probably difficult
Worse.
for parents too.
Yeah. And parking's quite tough, if we're being honest.
Oh, true.
I mean, as
all
all the
the
kids are
activities
leaving, it's
after
hard to get
school,
on
too.
campus that time.
The activities, students might be.
And I'll just
difficulty
tell you
with
right
that,
now,
too.
the groups I'm struggling with the teachers and the students. Those are the two groups that's going to be the hardest to get back on campus at 7 o'clock in May. So.
Well, and like I said, if it can't be done, the only reason this became this last-minute thing is because this PTAC meeting wasn't posted until Friday, and all of a sudden it became noticeable, oh, gee, we're doing this at 7:30 in the morning. So if it had been posted earlier, it would have been possible to have this discussion earlier. So we might be kind of boxed in at the moment for this one, unfortunately.
But Rich is, to that point, Rich is absolutely right. I think kind of setting a permanent schedule, hopefully someday, but giving plenty of notice.
Yes.
Yeah, with repeated notices, yeah.
And the idea of a forum type thing, maybe that would be a follow-on if we make PTAC a bit more accessible. If we see people are coming and seeming to express an interest, that might be a spin-off of, okay, maybe we need to have a separate thing as well. But I think we're making some good steps at just trying to make the meeting itself accessible.
Do we know what other districts do?
It varies wildly. We've looked at a lot. Some do mornings, some do evenings, some do after school. It's really kind of all over the place.
Okay, so the point for having this discussion was to get kind of a sense of the board and where the board was feeling on this.
So try to get an evening this time, but top priority, keep the committee intact for right now.
You got to have a meeting. You got to have a
Agreed.
meeting.
Working on it. The second piece then, in the future going forward, look for evening opportunities and then maybe some follow-up discussion about what other forums might look like based on that.
And that sounds like a good topic to bring to the PTAC committee itself, is relay this conversation that we had and see what the thinking on that committee is. And definitely, since I'm sure a topic on their agenda would be talking about their next meeting, you know, they'll need to think about what possible availability they may have and a regular schedule, that sort of thing. Kind of leave it in their hands, see where they go with it.
And to clarify, if the committee decides that it is 7:45 or 12 noon or 3 o'clock, and that's the agreed upon that works best, we can go with that?
For this one meeting you're talking, or for future?
Just moving forward, I mean, if you allow the committee to consider all the options of availability and trying to coordinate what could be, I don't know, 10, 12 schedules, and if the best meeting time for the committee is during the day, I'm assuming that would be permissible and allowable?
Well, it sounds like it's a committee advisory to the Board of Education, right? You said?
It's their
That is
function.
correct.
And it sounds like the feeling of the board is, if at all possible, we prefer them to be in the evening so that the community can connect with it better.
Right, and what I'm saying is if at all possible and it doesn't work out and the committee decides that it's during the day because that works out for their schedule, the committee is allowed to proceed with that, correct?
But how can we decide that, like, are you going to give it like one time, two time
No,
opportunity?
I'm just saying for the next, whenever the committee meets, and as you plan for the next meeting date and next meeting schedule and time, and you look at everybody's schedules and you look at the dates, if that's what works best for the committee to be able to meet, giving all the schedules and obligations, I know, again, it's if at all possible, but is it permissible, allowable for the committee to meet during the day if that's based on all the obligations when they can meet?
Well, we're only going to know the community interest if we actually have one of those meetings in the evening and see who shows up.
Just going to what Dr. Ching said, I completely, yeah. But I think Rich mentioned something that we could, moving forward, maybe, like we talked about, if
Yeah, post
given
the
enough
agenda
time.
sooner. Yeah.
You know what I mean? To also try that too, see if that works.
Yeah,
So-
for sure.
Moses, my answer to your question would be, if you possibly can get the committee to schedule in the evening per the board's direction, that would be awesome.
Correct.
But if you can't, the important part is that a committee meets and schedule it, because you need to get this done.
And that's what I was trying to clarify.
And we can't have you keep jumping through hoops and having a board cancel meetings that the committee has scheduled. I'm not quite sure why a straight answer can't be given, but that would be my answer to it.
Can you ask the committee as a whole to weigh in on this very topic? You know, how do they feel would be a good way to connect with the families in the community better with this meeting, and kind of see what wisdom comes out of their discussion? Since you said there's 5 parents as part of that?
Parents, 5 kids.
Right, so
yeah.
see what their thoughts are on how we can maximize the ability for our community to connect with it.
And I think that's exactly what, is one of my concerns, is it's difficult to give a straight answer when you haven't given something enough time to work or to see what that interest is.
Well, that's another problem with, having it once in the evening, and for some reason, nobody comes because it's a nice night, or there's something
Exactly.
on TV, and you go, oh, that's not going to work.
Right.
There's got to be some continuity, there's got to be some statistics to that.
That's why
It's
I
got
was
to be
asking.
well advertised.
Exactly. We have to be intentional in our approach and
Okay,
follow
well-
it through with fidelity.
Will, does that give you what you need, or are you still kind of not sure where we're headed here?
I just
think
don't
so.
want, I don't
I mean,
want
it's-
Will and the committee to be boxed. They meet again, they throw that out there, and the committee says, you know what, for the next meeting, whenever that is, the best one that works for us is during the day. having a good discussion about what's available and what's accessible, but they say, based on all of our schedules, 5 parents, 5 teachers, 5 kids, during the day is what's best. Is that okay?
I would like to hear, if that was their discussion and their recommendation, I would like to hear, it works best for us to have it during the day, and this is why we feel this can still connect with the families in our community, or this is, kind of, this works for us, but how are we reaching out to the families that aren't available at this time, and see what their thoughts are on that?
Sometimes things have to be a little inconvenient,
Right. Exactly.
To be honest with you, it's not always fun coming here at 7 o'clock at night, as much as I love you guys. But sometimes,
Yes.
you have to put that out there, that in order to get some community participation or family participation, and I'm sure you'll describe all that at the meeting and see let us know what they say.
Thanks for saying that.
The key is we provide opportunity for them to engage. And we're doing that by live streaming and recording the meetings. So they're having the same level of participation. We could allow them to submit their statements in advance that they would have made. They have the same level of interaction that they would have if they were here at the meeting. So, it really needs to be at the convenience of the people who are involved in the meeting. It should be the primary concern. It's got to be. We have other means to communicate the information to observers and for them to communicate with us.
And for me, transparency and accessibility is the most important.
Actually, that does,
For me, respect for the diversity in our community is the most important. Respecting the fact that many families have children and are not available in the evening. Many families with different work schedules and are not available in the evening. Our students have things going on that are critical and are not available in the evening. And our teachers are only paid to work a certain number of hours and are not available in the evening. So I think what we need to do is not be as cognizant of the time that the meeting is, but how do we make that meeting as transparent and open to as many people in the community, regardless of their schedules and regardless of the confines of their life. And that is all the things we've been trying to do by live streaming, by sending messages out on Facebook, by sending text messages out, by giving them opportunities to reach out to us, other than coming to a building at a certain time, no matter what their lives may look like. And I think that's where we're screwing this up incredibly, is thinking they need to come to us instead of us needing to go to them. We need to make it accessible for all those people who have different lives than those who are free in the evening to come to a board.
Gary, you do bring up an interesting point. Does our community now have the ability to submit public comment for any of our board meetings, where if they don't have to show up, they can just submit the public comment and it will be read into the minutes? Because I don't think we advertise anything like that.
No, and my familiarity
And I
is
know
that
some boards do that.
I'm not aware of boards that do that if they're meeting in person.
District 4 in Addison does that.
Okay, I'm not aware of, so it's something that we can look into.
Because that might be, I still have the same concerns about the timing and everything, but if we can look at the possibility of allowing our live stream audience to be able to submit public comment for regular board meetings, for CAL meetings, and for, in this case, for PTAC, and they can just email it to a certain address, and if it arrives by a certain time, then it will be read into the minutes by the chair of the meeting. That does take another step towards openness.
We don't have that ability now?
I don't think we do. I don't think we advertise that, but I think we should, actually. I think it
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It goes hand in glove with the live streaming.
Seems like you could do that with a text message to a district phone or something?
We don't have a
Email.
district phone. It would be
An
email,
email.
because
An
that way
email
it'd be
to-
documented,
email to
you
a-
can
yeah.
print it off and it's
Email.
recorded.
An email to a certain address,
Correct.
and then you would just bring the emails to the
Right.
meeting, and we'd go through them.
And then that way it's archived also on our server, so that if we needed to go back, we have that.
So is that something, Moses, you can look into for
Yeah.
next meeting?
Yeah.
And then definitely you come up with something that works, let's plug it into this PTAC as well, so that gives people an opportunity, regardless of the timing of it, to submit public comment to PTAC.
It sounds like we're trying to please everybody. The people that can't come in the morning, come in at night. The people that can't come at night can come in the morning. You're never going to hit that perfect time. I think to me, the priority is to have the meeting with the best members of the meeting available, not to start diluting the meeting because so-and-so who was originally pegged to get into that meeting because of their skills and experience can't come now because the meeting's in a different time. I mean, we should be holding the PTAC meeting because that's a requirement, and then we follow up with forums and something more interactive. And again, you're not going to get everybody that wants to come to be able to come to that point. It just isn't going to work. The best you can do is get something that's going to meet most people's expectations and give them enough time to be able to plan for it.
Agreed. My concern is just the fact that there seems to be so much hesitation to adapting to something new. And if anything we've learned these last few years with COVID is we have to be adaptable and we have to take a new approach on things and maximize opportunity.
But you have to do it with planning.
Yeah. But we also have to be willing to be open.
Okay, Will, how does it sit with you right now? Is it as clear as mud, or do you kind of have an idea where to go with this?
Got it.
Okay, sounds like we've beaten this one to death for tonight. All right, at this point, we are looking for a motion to go to executive session for the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees, as well as collective negotiating matters.
Moved.
Is there a second?